I'm Jerry Crow with the Pacifica Historical Society and today's host of Footprints of Pacifica, the show where we explore the lure and lore of lovely Pacifica, its character and its characters. The subject of today's show is Horace Hinshaw, long well known around town as sports editor for the Pacifica Tribune. This gives us a chance to learn a little bit more about his history as well as his contributions to our town. Welcome, Horace. Thank you so much for agreeing to be with us on this show. You must know more about sports than anyone else in Pacifica, but let's start with your general background. Where did you originate from?
I came to California from Arkansas back in 1963 after graduation from a college, Arkansas State University. Went to work with the local newspaper in Little Rock, Arkansas as a sports writer. Drafted by United States Army in '63. Got my way out here to San Francisco. Yes, I served 2 years at the Presidio of San Francisco. Great duty.
That was tough.
It was, unfortunately, it was good duty and really enjoyable. Stayed out here for 2 years, met my wife who lived in San Francisco, but at the time was living in San Diego, and we happened to have met in San Diego, and she came back up here and we met and eventually got married, moved to Pacifica in 1969, bought our first house up in the Fairmont area. I wish I'd kept that house now as a rental. It would have been great. And we stayed there for 3 or 4 years and then sold that house and moved back to Park Pacifica, where we live now. I started working for the Tribune and well, actually, I'll back up. I started working for the Postal Service in 1965, and then when we came to Pacifica in '69, I started working for the Tribune.
Was your degree in journalism originally, or is this something that you picked up afterward?
No, I had a degree in journalism, radio and communications and public relations, and got into that field eventually with the Postal Service as the public affairs manager for Northern California, and then I retired 2 or 3 years ago.
Let's talk a little bit about your hobbies before we go on to the sports picture. What are the things that you have enjoyed most outside of work over these years?
Well, of course, sports is really my big thing. I love all kinds of sports. I'm really into watching sports and enjoying it. Baseball, football, basketball primarily. My wife and I, earlier we used to dance quite a bit, and we would go dancing and enjoy ourselves. And in the last couple of years, the arthritis sits in, so we haven't done that as much. We enjoy cruises, as you'll see in that picture right there. We're on a cruise ship, one of our earliest cruises, and we try and take a cruise once every other year. We go to a ballpark almost every year. We've been to, out of the 30 some odd ballparks, we've been to about 25 ballparks over the last 40 years. So we really enjoy going around and visiting and taking our time and really enjoying it. This year we're going to spring training in Arizona where the Giants are playing. And of course, everybody is excited about the Giants, and we are too, and it works out very nicely.
Well, this has been a very rewarding year for your attentions to the Giants over the time we're talking about. Okay, let's see. So in 1969, you first moved to Pacifica, and you were working for the Postal Service at that time in public relations, did you say? I
was working with the inspection service at that time.
Oh.
And then I went into the communications public affairs after that, after I was in the inspection service for several years. And then I was really still interested in doing something in writing, particularly in sports. At that time in 1969, if you recall, the Skyline College was opening up on San Bruno. Yes. And I thought that would be a good opportunity. I thought they needed a sports information director, and I contacted a gentleman by the name of Sam Goldman there, and he was a journalism person. He was handling all the sports and everything, and of course, budget did not allow them to hire anybody at that statue. And he said, you know, there's a gentleman down in Pacifica at the Pacifica Tribune. His name is Bill Drake, and he said, I heard they were looking for somebody to write sports. And he said, why don't you go see him? And so the next week I went down to talk to Bill, and we hemmed and hawed for several days about what I could do. I couldn't work full-time because I had a full-time job, and which is great because retiring from the Postal Service really was a nice job, and the pension was really nice. And I stayed with the Postal Service, of course, and then we decided that I could do part-time on a 2-week trial basis just to see if it would work. Well, 2 weeks turned into 20 years. I had to then stop because my job with the Postal Service was taking me traveling quite a bit, and then they had a couple, 2 or 3 editors over the period of time I was gone. When I retired about 6, 7 years ago, they did not have an editor again, and they asked me to come back and help them out. And so that's what I've been doing. Over the 40 years, I did write stories for them. So I've been really writing sports for 45 years in town and enjoying it. It's tremendous. We have a great sports community here, and our volunteerism is great. People volunteer, they take care of the sports, and I enjoy just writing about it. I used to say that I not only wrote about it, I lived it, because my children were raised playing sports, and that really kept me involved with it.
What sports in particular did they like?
Well, they played. My son played baseball and soccer and CYO basketball, and my daughter played. She didn't play baseball. She played softball and soccer and basketball.
You were in the Postal Service during the period when they decided to become sponsors of the Olympics. Did you happen to enjoy any of the benefits of that period? Or
yes, that was a great time. It was really enjoyable. We got to meet a lot of people. And of course, Armstrong came to San Francisco quite a bit, and got to meet with him at various events. The Postal Service sponsored it for about 5 or 6 years, and of course, as everybody knows history, Armstrong won 7 Tour de France's. So cycling earlier was really great. Today it's not as popular as it was several years ago, and I think that's because the steroid era has really caught up with some of the cyclists.
I guess so.
At that time, cycling was very popular, and still today, every year, there's a tour that comes to Pacifica. It's called the Tour of California, and you get to see some excellent cyclists riding through the Coast Highway. So if people who are interested in cycling should really take that time to see that.
I was going to see them because they do a sprint right through the Lindemar area.
Yes, that's a time sprint from the top of the hill down to the Lindemar area, and they'll be back again this year, I'm sure.
Well, over the years, the Pacifica Sports Hall of Fame has become a really big part of our life here in town, and I think you had a lot to do with that, didn't you?
Well, I'm going to give credit to a gentleman who was really instrumental in incorporating Pacifica back in the late 1950s. Jerry Schumacher had started a club called the Pacifica Sports Club in 1964 to sort of highlight athletes here in town and really give them the recognition. And then he said in 1990 that he's going to leave, and he wanted to turn it over to me to continue it. And so I said, okay, we'll do that. But at that time, I thought it was important that we began a Sports Hall of Fame to recognize people who have gone on to excel in sports and be recognized coming from the city of Pacifica. So in 1991, the first Sports Hall of Fame began. This year, we will begin the 21st Hall of Fame, and over that period of time, we will have inducted around 122 athletes who have gone on to represent the city of Pacifica.
Mm-hmm. You remember some of the more prominent ones that maybe made it in the big leagues?
We've had several ones. In fact, not only necessarily big leagues, but we've had some outstanding stars to play collegiate ball as well. Not necessarily baseball, but gone on to play gymnastics, tennis, golf, along that line. A couple of the people that people might know in professional football would be Kevin Gogan. He played for the Dallas Cowboys and had 2 Super Bowl rings. Mm-hmm. The other gentleman that has a Super Bowl ring from Pacifica is Derek LeVavelle. He played with the San Francisco 49ers. He was a Reardon High School graduate, and Kevin was a Sacred Heart graduate. And those 2 people have represented Pacifica in Major League and professional football. In the Canadian Football League, we had a gentleman from Oceana High School, Manny Hazard, went on and had his really a fantastic year playing in the Canadian League. Baseball-wise, and we still have a gentleman still involved in baseball off the campus of Terra Nova High School in 1969, Bob McClure, one of the best pitchers to come out of Terra Nova and Pacifica. He went on to play professional baseball with several organizations, Milwaukee Brewers and a couple other ones, and now today he is a pitching coach for the Kansas City Royals. Another gentleman that plays, and he's not in the Hall of Fame, but he will be eventually, is Greg Reynolds. He's just beginning to play baseball with the Colorado Rockies. I think this is his 34th year. So we've had some nice people. George Rush from the City College of San Francisco, who coached the team to a national championship, a junior college national championship, is in the Sports Hall of Fame. And we could keep on going down the line, but if anybody who's really interested, I'll just take a walk over to the community center on Crespi, right down the road here, and look at the Wall of Fame. There's all 122 people are listed on that Hall of Fame.
Includes you too, doesn't it?
Including me too. I was
Yep.
very fortunate to be selected in 1992 or 93, something along that line.
Yeah. Well, before youngsters get to the Hall of Fame, they go through the sports scene in Pacifica. So I guess over the years there have been some interesting rivalries.
There have been, and of course it all starts out at the elementary level years ago, because years ago the elementary school would be playing each other in the various sports. That doesn't happen today because of the budget situation, but the Little Leagues and the American Youth Soccer Associations, the Catholic Youth Organizations, sports programs have put all the students playing against each other. So we're very fortunate that our children have grown up knowing each other and playing each other. And back in 1962-63, we had two high schools in Pacifica, Oceana, which was up in the north end of town, and Terra Nova, of course, still today. In 1991, Oceana closed and became more of an academic type college, and losing some of the sports programs. But over those 20-some odd years between Oceana and Terra Nova, the rivalry was fantastic. It was called, playing for the anchor game. And Oceana and Terra Nova every year brought out the crowds at whatever field they were playing at.
Nothing like competition day.
Nothing like competition. But then that dropped after Oceana dropped out of the sports. But a couple or 2 or 3 years after that, Bill Gray, as the coach at Terra Nova High School, he got together with the coaching staff and the school personnel down in Half Moon Bay, and they started what is called the Skull Game, which is fantastic because now we have a rivalry on the coast side, and each year they go back and forth and play, and it works out pretty good. I think Terra Nova has the upper hand right now and being the champion of the Skull Game.
Is that skull, you say?
Skull.
It's the skull of a sea lion or something like that?
Actually, it's a skull of a saber tiger.
Oh, okay.
Really a neat one. The trophy for the anchor game was actually a anchor that was hauled up years ago from the ocean.
Not something you could swipe easily as part of the rivalry.
No, that's right, and that's why they don't bring it out to the now, particularly now with the skull, with the saber tiger. It's a smaller case, so they really don't want to take a chance of somebody swiping that.
Yeah. Are there any other rivalries at the high school level that ever became kind of popular?
Well, once again,
subjects?
Anytime the Oceana and Terra Nova played sports against...
They didn't have a trophy for basketball.
No, the only trophy that we had was the football trophy. Now, of course, there's been some great basketball teams, both boys and girls here for the both schools, but the football was really the one that you looked at as being the rivalry and brought out the crowd, you might say.
But they've had some pretty serious teams, especially at Terra Nova, I think, in soccer and some of the other sports.
Well, Terra Nova have been very fortunate over the last 40 years. They have won 3 what we call Central Coast Championships, which really recognizes the elite sport. And just last year, the Terra Nova Tigers won the Central Coast Section Division III championship. Years ago, our basketball team, our girls basketball team, under the coaching of Jim Soden, was outstanding, and he used to really win going away. Back in the 1985-86, we had a volleyball championship from Terra Nova that went all the way to the state finals. The only volleyball championship that's done that here at Terra Nova under the coaching at that that time, Tanya Moe. And so we have had some outstanding athletes come through our high school system here, and we'll continue to have outstanding athletes to come through. Our coaching has been good, although now as you look at the coaching, you'll find that we have more of off-campus coaches than we do on-campus coaches, and we'd like to go back, I would think, like to go back to find those on-campus coaches, because they are really closer to the kids than an off-campus coach, because that person only sees that student in the afternoon, 4 or 5 o'clock. An on-campus coach sees that student throughout the whole day and can talk to them, watch them, what they're doing, and really be involved with them. So I would like to see eventually, if we could ever get our budgets back together,
and, a matter of economics,
and somebody's on the teaching staff that's interested in sports, to really take the bull by the horn and become the coaches of the Ferris program.
Well, I noticed some of the gentlemen that were stars as students have come back to help out, like Tom Piccolotti is very active.
We've had several people that come back, and I really applaud them for coming back and doing that. It also helps with our children going through the school system here in Pacifica too, because they'll eventually be a graduate of either Terranova or Oceana. So we're very fortunate to have some of those students. But I have to give also a recognition to the people years ago who really started the programs here, the Little League people, the soccer people, the people that really put the foundation to make things what we have today. And I mentioned about volunteerism. Without people volunteering, our programs just would not be here today. So we're very fortunate to have those pioneers of years ago, and many of those pioneers are in the Hall of Fame, Pacifica Hall of Fame, for their recognition to the city of Pacifica.
Mm-hmm. And Terranova has a pretty creditable wrestling program too, doesn't it? It's not that usual for a high school, but I notice they get the headlines quite a bit.
They began a wrestling program back at Terranova several years ago. The wrestling in Pacifica really belonged to Oceana years ago, when Bill Gray was at the coach of Oceana. He put that wrestling program on a next level that had never been there before throughout Northern California. And it's a model that a lot of the coachings from all over Northern California look at today and sort of take their program after. This year, Oceana has, under Mike Tang, who happened to have graduated from Oceana several years ago and was a student of Bill Gray's, who was a champion himself, is coaching the team, and they are doing very good. They have a 5-1 one-loss record this year, and have some wrestlers that could compete for the Central Section Championships this year. So we have some great athletes in Pacifica.
Yep. What about the surfing scene? This is maybe not in your direct field, but Pacifica's been known since the 1930s for the surfing activity along the waterfront.
Yes, you go back to people like Dick Keating and Jay Jansen and people like Greg Cochran's and people like that who are very involved in the Pedro Point Surf Club. Surfing is really big here in our area, and we're great. You come right to the beach. When I moved here from Arkansas, I had never seen the ocean, and now I see the ocean every day when I drive home.
Yeah, it's a real treat.
It's fantastic. Coming down that highway, you see the water, and you see the surfers out there. It's amazing. We have some surfers who are in the Pacifica Hall of Fame, and it's with them really making the sport a name, has carried it all the way through. The Mavericks here in Half Moon Bay, it's known nationwide. We have two people from Pacifica, Sean Rhodes and another gentleman who, Matt Ambrose, who will be surfing in that Mavericks whenever they decide to make the waves come high enough. But so we've had some great individual surfers here. Skateboarding has become a big thing in Pacifica. You have to applaud the PB&R department, the recreation department, and the leaders who put that skateboard park together several years ago.
I'm amazed at that. It's just jammed with kids every day.
It's great. You go there and see this. So we're very fortunate. The Pacifica Tennis Club, although it's probably not as really well known today as it was maybe 20 years ago when they were really excelling and going to these tournaments and winning, the Pacifica, and of course with the Terranova High School going through some work on their field and the theater that's going there, it sort of put the tennis court behind and not being able to be active as much. But years ago, the Pacifica Tennis Club was very well organized and won a lot of championships for the people. So we're very fortunate here in Pacifica to have a great balanced athletic program.
How are we for venues? Have we got enough good fields to play on in town, or is that something that needs work in the future?
I was talking to the Pacifica Terra Nova baseball coach a week ago. He played in 1987 with Terra Nova baseball, and we were doing a story. And he said, look around. This field is the same as it was 20 years ago. The only thing that's been added to that field is a scoreboard. That speaks true for every field here in Pacifica except the Ingrid B. Lacey Field. That was put together about maybe 10 years ago as a new field. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the maintenance of it has not been kept up, and we're suffering from the lack of maintaining fields today. And it's only because of the volunteerism of the people who play on this field that we're able to keep those up. We need playing fields desperately here in Pacifica. I've been trying and advocating for a sports complex for years, and I think that we need some kind of sports complex for our people. We're probably one of the very few cities in the peninsula on the coast that does not have a overall sports complex that you can call a venue where you can come in and play first-class tournament baseball, mm-hmm. and we need something like that. I hope that eventually that will come to pass.
How much room does that take? How much space? Is that something the area near the quarry might be developed in if they ever come up with a plan?
Unfortunately, we don't have space right now, but we could find space, and who knows? We have Odshed School as a sports complex. Years ago, we tried to put something at Sanchez Arts Center, where the Arts Center now is, and we could not raise enough money, and the art people then came in and took the facility, which is fantastic. They did a great job with the Arts Center, and it's really through the sports people that they were able to get that, because that brought recognition to that school that we're sitting there. Mm-hmm. So the sports people have really been active in this city. The quarry, of course, would be it's got more than enough space to put, but that we need a lot of other things, but that's an expensive thing. Yeah. But I would like to see, hopefully, that there would be some place in our community that we could have a sports complex.
But a school campus represents about the amount of space that would work out, it sounds like.
Exactly, yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, how about your active involvement in sports? It's these days, it's the Giants, isn't it, that claims your attention?
Yes, we're fortunate to, both my wife and I work for the San Francisco Giants, and I've been working there since the park opened up. The AT&T Park opened up in 2000, and I've been working there. My wife joined about 2-3 years later. It's a fun thing. We really have a good time there. We interact with the fans. We get to see the ball games. We were going to a game, maybe 35 games a year, and somebody said to me, why don't you think about working here, because of it's a new place and you're going to be retiring soon. And I said, yeah, that sounds good. And now we work and we get to see a game, and so it really works out nicely. We're going to spring training this March, and as I understand, it's going to be a sellout in Scottsdale, Arizona, because a lot of people. And I don't know what time this show is going to air, and if it airs and you happen to be watching this before March 11th, supposedly the trophy, the World Series trophy, is going to be coming to Pacifica. So we're just waiting to see and getting the final word on that. They have not selected a date nor time. We're hoping that will happen.
You work as ushers there?
Yes, we work as ushers. You first go in, you work around the ballpark and doing various things, and you get to see the field from different perspectives.
Sure.
You can work in the view, you can work in the bleachers, you can work doing an elevator up and down.
Yeah, I think a lot of Pacificans are involved out there. I know Rick Del Santino works in operations. He takes care of the operating equipment behind the scenes.
Well, we're very fortunate. Last year, we had 30 ushers from Pacifica, just ushers now, not necessarily people from other jobs, but just ushers working out there. the city that had the most ushers was Pacifica. So as I tell everybody, we're going to just control the AT&T Park
Definitely
and make people feel at home.
sports-minded town.
It is a sports-minded town. You just look around, just drive around the city every day, every weekend. You're going to see people playing. Baseball, Little League Baseball is going to be starting next month, and you'll see games every night on our fields here.
Are there any maybe interesting characters that we've missed talking about in your years of involvement in sports?
Well, I think we've hit on...
Not necessarily great players, but characters that stick in your mind?
Well, I think the person I have to really give a lot of kudos to is Bill Drake. Bill Drake started the Tribune, as you well know, in 1959. And he really was the first sports editor at the Tribune. And from his starting in that, it's just built. And we've carried that tradition all along the way and built a paper that really, I think, covers a lot of activities. Today's paper is not as large or as productive, maybe as production-wise as it was back when Bill started. And once again, that's because of the budget constraints that we have. Today, I rely mostly on the coaches and parents to send things in to us, and I'm more than willing to take human interest stories that people want to share with us, and we'll print. So I have to give a lot of credit to Bill Drake over the years of really helping the Tribune and promoting sports.
He did a great job with the paper. I guess it was known as the golden age of small town newspapers back in the few decades ago. A little tighter now, but
yes,
that was quite a time.
Well, like I say, the paper's been around even before Bill. Bill bought it in '59, but it was here, going back in the 40s and 50s. So we've had a Pacifica paper for like almost 60 years. So we're very fortunate to have a paper in the community.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, if people stay alert for opportunities to help out with improving the venues around town or getting information into you, as you said, that's how anybody in town can be part of the sports scene.
Correct.
So we all appreciate that a lot. Well, that's about all the time we have for tonight. So what I'll do is, if people want to get involved in the Pacifica Historical Society, our address is Box 752, Pacifica, Zone 94044. Our telephone number is 650-359-5462. And thank you for watching this show today.
Just
I had a
yeah, we didn't get to